What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing, and your Green Bay Packers are 2-0 in 5 days and defeated two of the final four teams in the NFC last season in impressive fashion. Guys, I know I predicted on the podcast the Packers would win this game, but I really did think there was a chance that they could show up flat on a short week and not play their best football. But what did they do instead? They show up and absolutely throttled another really, really good team. After two games against two really good teams, and I want to stress that again, I don't think that it's been stressed enough how good the two teams are that we just throttled. I don't think I could have dreamed up a better result than what we've gotten so far. I'm sure you all agree. I told everyone that would listen in the offseason, especially after the Parsons trade, that this team was going to be really, really good, but to be honest, I never expected that they would look this good through two games. And again, I just want to stress it one more time, especially to those of you who aren't as, obsessed with the NFL as I am or others might be. The Lions won 15 games last season. They came into this season with a lot of people thinking they were the biggest threat to the Eagles in making the Super Bowl, right? I certainly felt that way. And then the Commanders, who we just beat on Thursday night, they beat the Lions last year and eliminated them from the playoffs. The Commanders were in the NFC Championship game, so they were one game away from the Super Bowl. Jaden Daniels, their quarterback, many thought he would go into this season as an MVP candidate, myself included. All that being said, your Green Bay Packers made the Lions look like a 2-win team rather than a 2-loss team. And the Commanders, in my opinion, looked even worse than the Lions did. So I just wanted to stress again how impressive these two games really were. I know it's early, guys. This is a very, very special Packers team. And what we've seen so far, especially on defense, we have not seen that since the new millennium started, since the 90s. Yes, to the older fans, if there are any older fans listening to this, yes, the 96 team did have a better team, I'm sure. They had the number one defense in the league that year and the number one offense. Don't get mad at me. But I will say, I think this team can be better than that 96 team if they reach their ceilings. So I'll get off my soapbox. Let's break down the game a little bit. Let's go through the players of the game in this one. Ian's favorite players of the game. Jordan Love. Start with Jordan Love. He finished with 290 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, and yet again, no interceptions, which makes it 9 straight regular season games without a pick. Even in Aaron Rodgers' prime, even in all his greatness, he never accomplished that, which is kind of a crazy thing. I thought Jordan was really, really sharp in this game. I thought he made the right read and right throw on almost every single play. With the exception of that long heave to Romeo Doubs, that was, it was broken up, but didn't like that decision. But all that being said, he still wasn't near as good as he can be. He missed what I would call a easy touchdown to Matthew Golden in the first quarter on the first drive. He underthrew it and allowed Trey Amos to jump in front of it. And then this one hurt. He missed Golden on that deep throw in the second quarter. He missed him by about 2 feet in the end. He had to lay out for it. Again, if those had been completed, I think Jordan would have looked a lot more. It would have felt a bit more like a blowout, is what I'm trying to say. I should say it would have looked more like a blowout. I think this felt like a blowout, even though it wasn't. That deep ball to Jaden Reed that he threw, guys, my God, there was obviously the holding on that play, but go back and watch that play. He avoids pressure, resets his feet, throws it essentially 50 yards in the air, and hits Jaden Reed right in the hands in the corner of the end zone. It was an absolutely stunning throw. Again, Jordan doesn't have the frequency of crazy throws that Rodgers did, but he can make any throw that Rodgers could make. I shouldn't say any. That there was a throw. Some of you guys might remember this. I think it was against the Lions back in might have been 2012. I'm not sure what year it was, but it was a deep throw. He overthrew Jarrett Boykin on the play. He threw the ball almost 80 yards in the air. So I don't think Jordan's quite as good as Aaron Rodgers in that aspect, but he can make all the same throws. Anyway, here's what was most impressive, though, about Jordan. And here's what's been the most impressive through the first two games. And this is a really big takeaway that we need to talk about. And again, this makes sense based off of how last year went, right? In the first two games of the season, the Lions and the Commanders, they clearly had a game plan to go into the game and stop Josh Jacobs. And they basically said, okay, Jordan, why don't you beat us with your arm? The reason I say that, there was a ton of single high safety in both games, which basically means they bring one of their safeties up in the box to sort of aid in run support. So when they do that, their theory is, hey, if we bring another defender into the box, they're going to have a harder time running it. And that's essentially what both teams have done so far. Again, it opens up the defense for a better passing attack. So yes, based off of last season, Jordan didn't play that great, right? We know it was because he was hurt. The receivers didn't really help him out at all last season. But Jordan's healthy, guys, and he looks really, really good. I predicted in the Bold Predictions episode, which is starting to look pretty good, by the way, that he would play like an MVP candidate all season. He would be in the running all season. I don't think he's ultimately going to win it. I really hope I'm wrong, obviously. But, guys, they have gone into each game, both the Lions and the Commanders, saying, okay, Jordan, show us what you got. And they have, right? Josh Jacobs has not been able to get it going yet. He's had a couple good runs in both games, but that's what makes this team so dangerous, right? If a team goes into the game trying to stop the passing attack, so they bring the safety back and play too deep, which I think is going to happen next week, then you run it down their throat with Josh Jacobs, right? Anyway, back to Jordan. I couldn't be more excited for how he started. Yeah, he's definitely missed some throws. We definitely haven't seen his best. I thought he played really, really well in this one, though, and the PFF grade will reflect that, which we'll talk about shortly. Tucker Kraft, man, it was only a matter of time before Tucker had his coming out party, is what I would call it. And I would say he certainly had it in this one. I saw it in real time, people on Twitter just gassing him up and kind of figuring out in real time what we all knew, that he's a star in the making. He finished with 6 catches for 124 yards and a tutty. So the regular stats are there. Here's the fun stat, though. And this is the one that shows how good he can be. He had 74 yards after the catch in this game. So again, those are wide receiver numbers. And he was able to do it in this game, which again, just blew my mind. Last year, and if you guys didn't know this is crazy too, he did lead the league in yards after catch for tight ends last season with 9. So every time he caught the ball, he averaged 9 yards after the catch. So again, just crazy. On that long reception, so the 53-yarder, whatever it was, he reached a top speed of 19.19 miles an hour. That's hauling ass for someone his size. I think Tuck's like 255. He's just yoked, by the way. I don't think this is going to be his last big game. And, I predicted on the Bold Predictions episode. I'm going to keep referencing that because I feel good about it so far. He is going to be in an all-pro conversation this year. And not sure if you guys saw, but George Kittle's been hurt. He's going to be hurt. So currently, I think he's the best tight end in the NFC. So again, we'll see how that turns out. Next player of the game, Micah Parsons. God, you guys, I'm not going to... At some point, I'm going to have to stop talking about Micah because, he's going to be probably insane in every game. But, he ended up playing more snaps in this game. He didn't play... I think he played over 50% of the snaps in this one. He was unreal. If you guys watched the game, you saw how much press he got in the booth afterward. Insane game from him. He finished with 9 pressures in this game. PFF had him at 8. I think Football Outsiders had him at 9. Doesn't matter. He finished with a half sack, 3 quarterback hits, 5 hurries. So again, and I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings here, but if you're really just looking at sacks with defensive linemen and pass rushers, you're not looking at the right stuff, right? And if you don't believe me, remember back in, I think it was 2018, Kyler Fackrell had, I think it was 10.5 sacks that year. And nobody was afraid of him. So I'll just say that and we'll leave it at that. But I thought Micah wrecked shop last night. If you look at the post-game interview, like I said a minute ago, go watch the game review or whatever it's called. I forget what they call it, where Micah joined the booth after with Whitworth and all of them. He's just an absolute culture changer. He talked about in that interview how he came into a locker room full of people that played the game like he did, so he didn't have to change the culture here. It was just a really cool interview. And then I don't know if you guys saw, but obviously I really just hate Jerry Jones. So maybe it's irrational to hate some old man that's clearly senile and losing it, but the thank you Jerry chants that Micah, he had to just been sitting there just beaming that Packer fans were that pumped up about it. And again, look, I understand why the Cowboys did it. I don't think the Cowboys made this egregious mistake like a lot of people do. They have a lot of guys to pay, and they made the wrong decision in my opinion. But it's not like it's just this crazy decision, right? They've already paid a couple of their guys since trading Micah. I get it, stupid move. Packers benefited from it. So again, Micah Parsons had a great game in this one, and we'll get to the grades in a minute from PFF. Keyshawn Nixon, wow, was he good in this game. Again, coming into the season, everybody, myself included, was pretty worried about the cornerback room. I was pretty open about how bad I wanted them to take a corner in the second round specifically instead of Anthony Belton, who we'll talk about in a bit. Nixon last season, when he switched to outside corner, I thought he played significantly better than he ever did in the slot. But Nixon played out of his mind in this game. This was one of the best cornerback performances I've seen since the Woodson days. I don't think it was quite as good as Jair in 2018 against the Rams. That was a crazy game. But he ended the game with 5 pass breakups. Five pass breakups. That's crazy. Average to decent defensive backs in one season finished with like 10 to 15. So for him to have 5 in one game is absolutely crazy. He didn't allow a catch either. I did see in one of the, and again, some of these stats are sort of subjective, right? I did see he was credited with 1 catch against him in the game from another source, but PFF said he didn't have anybody catch anything on him. So I just wanted to give you guys a stat that you may have seen already. This is crazy, right? Sometimes addition by subtraction is very important. So as you guys know, the Packers started Eric Stokes last season in games, which is crazy. He had a great rookie season, right? But since his rookie season, Stokes had 0 pass breakups from basically 2022 all the way to this season. He still hasn't had a pass breakup. So for Nixon to have 5 in this game just shows you like they have improved at corner this year. And I thought Nate Hobbs played well in this game. He didn't play a lot of snaps, but this was his first game as a Packer. He had a couple really nice reps against McLaurin in this game in the slot. I thought he played well also. Dontavian Wicks, he didn't light up the stat sheet in this game, but he got open with frequency in this one. But most importantly, after what we saw last season, he caught every single target. So obviously we can talk about it a little bit. I don't want to get into it too much. Jaden Reed is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks with a collarbone injury. They hope to have him back in November. Wicks is going to get a lot more targets. And I think that cemented my prediction, at least that it's close, right? That he's going to be wide receiver 1 this year. Dobbs is going to have something to say about that. And candidly, if Matthew Golden would have caught his targets, again, to no fault of his own, he probably would have looked more like a wide receiver 1 in this game. But Wicks was open with regularity in this game, and I was really impressed with what we saw from Wicks. A couple other guys I thought played well. Devontae Wyatt played really, really well. He had 7 pressures in this game. He was all over the field. Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper both played well again. Their speed is what I would credit for, why Jaden Daniels couldn't run the ball, and neither could the running backs, by the way. Javon Bullard didn't light up the stat sheet. He's been getting a lot of crap from Packer fans, just kind of due to some bad reps against Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he did have a catch this game too. I think it was against Ertz. Doesn't matter. I thought he played well in this game too. Again, he's not in the slot to be a man corner. He's in the slot to be like a third safety. And what they're going to do, and the reason we've seen so much of Bullard, and I think they're going to have a hard time pulling him off the field after the last couple games, but is they're essentially putting him in for like big nickel. So we saw a lot of Isaiah McDuffie last season where they basically ran 3 linebacker sets. Instead of doing that this season, they're basically putting Javon Bullard in instead of Isaiah McDuffie. Obviously, they're playing a different position, but that's how they get to their 11. I thought he's played very, very well in that role so far. Last guy, Romeo Doubs. I love the touchdown catch he had against the corner. He had a couple of really nice plays in this game. There's probably a ton more that I'm forgetting too, guys, but overall, there were so many people I could have picked for this, but I think those guys really kind of were the best guys in this game. Let's talk about the defense. I've candidly just run out of words to say about the defense. Let's go over a few stats since I've run out of words. The score, by the way, wasn't close to indicative in how the game went, right? I don't think it, 18 points it feels like the Commanders should have had like 5 or 6 points, right? In the first half, the Commanders only scored 3 points. They didn't even reach 100 yards until the second half. With run defense, right? The Commanders had 220 yards rushing last week against the Giants, right? But the Giants have a good defense, okay? In this game, the Commanders had 51 rushing yards. So again, they had almost 170 yards less this week against the Packers. So again, so much for the run defense BS that we were hearing about how the Packers' run defense was going to be so bad without Kenny Clark. LOL. That's all I'm going to say. Third down. the Commanders were held to 5 out of 16 on third down. So they were, I think that's like 20-some%. I could be wrong on that. It's crazy. And the majority of those conversions on third down came in the second half. A lot of them came on those final 2 drives in garbage time. Every single time third down came up, it felt like it was 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, whatever. 3rd and long every time. I stood up every time and got ready to cheer every single time. The defense is just so fun, right? I used to, and this is a true statement, right? Would have my Twitter account open up during a game, and because I stream the games, I don't have cable. They're always like a little bit behind the people who were at the game. So I would say like 15 seconds behind. So sometimes I would see what happened before it happened on Twitter, and I would only do it on defense because I just dreaded what would happen. And granted, last season defense was better, but I just love to eat it up this time. So this defense, again, so fun. After all the years of Packers defenses playing super soft coverage on third down, and the receiver would catch it right at the sticks, and then they'd convert, right? This is our payback. And it feels great. Let's get into pressure. My God, when I read this, your mind's gonna blow. The Packers pressured the Commanders 33 times. 33. I had to double check that. That's pure insanity. They didn't come near that at any point last season. In fact, I think the highest they had last season was like 15, I want to say. Micah Parsons had 8. Devontae Wyatt had 7. Edgerrin Cooper and Rashawn Gary had 4. Barron Sorrell, he played his first game. He had 2 pressures late. Carl Brooks and Kingsley Enagbare had 2. It was just an all-out assault on Jaden Daniels. I started to feel bad for him. They hit him 12 times. They hit Jaden Daniels 12 times. And again, this is a guy who runs like a 4.4, and he couldn't escape the Packers defense. It's just crazy. Sometimes when I read these, and it does match what we see, I don't want to be, I want to be clear about that, but it's just a wild, wild feeling to have a defense this good. The recipe for this team dominating every week, it's get ahead on offense, stop the run on early downs, get them into 3rd and long, and then Micah and the boys just tee off on 3rd down. That's what's happened the first 2 games. I don't see how that changes. The only way that a team's going to be able to beat the Packers is if they get 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. And the more Micah plays, right, he's not even playing all the snaps. He's not even in shape yet. That's the craziest thing. This team's only going to get better. And again, they played 2 really good offenses. You can say what you want about the Commanders' defense. And, I think the Lions' defense is really good, but they have boat raced these 2 teams. Here's a couple stats for you. I know you guys might not know what EPA per play is. If you don't, this is a crazy stat. 0 is neutral, right? And these decimals and stuff, without getting into too many details, it explains a lot. I'll just say that. The Packers have allowed a combined negative .091 EPA per play. So for perspective, that would have ranked second best in the NFL last season. The 2 teams they've beaten so far were the top 4 offenses last year in EPA per play. So they have, if they kept this up the whole year, would have been the second best team in the NFL in EPA per play against 2 teams who were insanely good on offense. It's complete and pure, utter domination. I can't say enough about it. Last thing before we move on, I mentioned it in the Keyshawn Nixon blurb earlier, but the cornerbacks have taken a ton of shit this offseason. Some of it from me. When they traded Jair, I knew he wasn't going to be back, right? I'd kind of hoped that there could be a resolution. I mean, can you imagine him on this team? Even if he's not what he was, and he's not, by the way, he played terrible against the Ravens, or on the Ravens. Between Nixon, Hobbs, and Valentine, Jaden Daniels targeted them 10 times, and combined, they only allowed 1 reception for 7 yards. Complete domination from the corners. Insane. Top 5 graded players on defense from PFF. Micah Parsons, of course, finished with a 91 grade. And again, 60 is average, 91 is elite. Keyshawn Nixon finished with a 90. Carrington Valentine, 79. Isaiah McDuffie, 77. He didn't play that many snaps, but still good to see from him. And then Kingsley Enagbare with the 72. And there's a bunch of others guys that were in the 70s, which again is above average, right? So it's just so much fun. I think they're going to have a chance to hold the Browns like 100 yards in the whole game next week, but we will talk about that when the time comes. Offense. Before I get into offense, as great as they looked, I want to just lead with this. They played like a B-level game. this isn't even close to what they can do when they play their best. And they didn't really get close to their best against the Lions either, right? In this game, they didn't have Zach Tom. They didn't have Aaron Banks. And I do think the loss of Tom, we'll get into the way the guys played in his absence, but I thought it was felt in this one. They rotated Darian Kennard and Anthony Belton, which was a big surprise. I was texting my cousin during the game or before the game, and he's like, they're actually starting Anthony Belton. I was like, really? Anthony Belton, second-round pick. I don't know anything about linemen, but people seem to be okay with the pick. Then the preseason came. I thought he played well in that first game. He had a ton of penalties in the second game. I was just pretty surprised to see them start a rookie against, essentially Von Miller and Doris Armstrong, who had 9 pressures last week, but I thought they both held up really, really well in this one. The only real hole in the game, the line did give up a lot of pressures to the Commanders, but it came mostly when the Commanders rushed 5 and 6 man. They had 5-6 man pressure looks. So again, it wasn't like they had their front four just dominating. Bobby Wagner played really well in this game. He was all over the field. I felt like he single-handedly blew up the Packers' run game. But, defensively, the Packers outgained the Commanders 404 yards to 232. They averaged 6.3 yards per play. Crazy. Jordan Love averaged 9 yards per pass attempt, which is crazy, cartoonish. We talked in the keys to the game about the Packers' use of motion and how important it is. If you go back and watch the replay, guys, they dialed up motion the entire game. Every single play, it felt like somebody was running across the formation. And this is what they did against the Cowboys when Dan Quinn was coaching the Cowboys defense, that 2023 playoff game. It felt like LaFleur just kind of went right back to his bag on that. And the crazy thing is, right, they had plays that worked in the first half. Rather than trying to change it up too much in the second half, he just ran them again, and the Commanders couldn't stop him, right? LaFleur really wanted to get the defense running laterally. He knew that those linebackers and even the safeties couldn't keep up with the Packers' speed on offense. That certainly was the case. The passing game was what I would call dynamic. It was creative. It was efficient. Jordan's only real misses, again, were that overthrow to Golden and the deep throw. That should have been, I wouldn't say a touchdown. That would have been really hard for him to keep running on that, but it should have been like a 60-yard completion. And then there was I think it was the first quarter, first drive. He had Golden wide open on a post route in the end zone, and he underthrew it. So outside of those 2 throws, though, I thought he played pretty well. Running game, it wasn't very effective in this one. I really am happy they stuck with it. I think Jacobs had 23 carries or something like that. And that's what you have to do in these games. You have to show that you're willing to run the ball. I do think that LaFleur got a little bit conservative in this game. The Commanders scored. They got it to 17-10, I believe. And then the next drive, LaFleur ran it twice, didn't get any gains, and then I think Jordan had a throwaway because the play was off. I don't know what it was, but that was really the only blemish on LaFleur's play calling resume today. Quick side note, you guys know I love Savion Williams. They drafted him in the 3rd round. I was quite surprised that they did. They ended up picking 2 of my favorite players in the draft. They used Savion Williams as a wildcat quarterback in this one. I thought that was really, really fun. He looked freakishly fast. He had another, I think it was a reverse in this one. They lined him up in the backfield a few times as a running back. I expect we're going to see more touches from Savion in the coming weeks with Reed being out. I expected him to do a little bit more stuff laterally where they actually hand it to the guy in motion. They did it a couple times with Golden. I think they did it with Savion as well. It did work. I do think they probably could have done it a few more times, but I digress. With the offense, I know it's easy to point to the way they slowed down in the second half. And to be fair, that did happen against the Lions too. But this is a short week. Last week was week 1. For perspective, they didn't really do any practice this week. They did walkthroughs, right? They don't want to get the guys in and beat them up after a game a few days ago. So you can expect some sloppy play. And I felt like they were a little bit sloppy on offense at times, but there were plays there all over the All-22. If you guys watch the All-22 tape, you can see it. They could have blown this game wide open. And just give it some time. Those plays are going to start to hit. The obvious misses, again, were the ones to Golden. If they were able to pick up the pressure a bit better from Washington, there were a few more plays to Golden where he was wide open in this one. There was a play where Dontavian Wicks absolutely dusted Marshawn Lattimore in an in-cut. I think it was early in the fourth quarter. Jordan had to throw it away because he had a dude literally in his face. But, man, that was a crazy route. The dude basically fell. Like I said, I think it was Marshawn Lattimore. Keep in mind, right, both of these teams are really good. The Lions defensively are really good, I think. They're going to end the year with a top 10 defense. Washington, they got some really good players. Dan Quinn's a really good play caller on defense despite this game. It's early. Once the offense starts to play closer to their ceiling, I think it's over for the league, candidly. I think considering the way these games finished in the final score, it wasn't even near their best, right? And that's some high praise for our Packers. Top 5 players on offense graded by PFF. Jayden Reed had a 95 grade. The way they grade, they don't hurt. So obviously that touchdown catch that was nullified by the penalty, Jayden Reed got credit for that catch. He played like 7 snaps. He was open a few other times in the game too. Well-deserved grade when he was there. The Packers are going to miss him, right? Malik Heath had a 91.7 grade. That is that crazy, crazy catch he had on the sidelines in the game. I can't even tell you guys how crazy that was. I played receiver in high school in a mediocre fashion, by the way, but just the athleticism to not only catch the ball, but to get his feet down when his momentum was drifting out of bounds there. That catch had a 7% probability rate of happening, which I think was one of the highest or lowest probability rates of any play in the last 7 years, I think it was. So again, just crazy play on there from Malik Heath. He had an 80 run blocking grade in this one too. And, he's a pretty good blocker. We kind of knew that, but it was good to see him make the most of his touches in this one. Jordan Love, 86.7 grade, elite for Jordan. Currently he has a top 5 grade from PFF in the league. We'll see where everybody ends up this week. Had he hit those 2 plays to Golden, I do think he would have had a 90 grade in this one. He was credited with 2 big-time throws. One of them was to Jayden Reed. I'm assuming the other was the one to Malik Heath. I'm not sure on that one, but again, awesome game from Jordan. Tucker Kraft did an 86.5. Obviously, we already talked about his game in this one. I thought he played well. And Luke Musgrave was number 5 here, 86th even. He made a couple nice catches in this one. He had a couple plays where he beat a linebacker. There was actually a play where he ran a sort of a crossing route against Bobby Wagner, and again, nobody can keep up with Musgrave. Linebackers can't catch him. So again, I think we're still going to see some more plays from Musgrave this season. A couple others with elite grades. Wicks had an 80 grade, so he didn't finish in the top 5, but awesome grade by Wicks. Other people of note, Jordan Morgan started at left guard for Aaron Banks. He had an interesting game. He had a really good pass blocking grade. He didn't allow a single pressure, didn't allow a quarterback hit, nothing. He graded a 72 pass blocking grade, but again, 60s average. He had a 33 run blocking grade. That's putrid. He looked lost in the running game. I did see a couple of the plays that some other podcasters had mentioned where he was, his back was turned. He was staring at the running back. And, just clearly, I think he was playing a bit out of position. They've been running him a lot at tackle. When you don't have a guy at one position, practicing there, getting a lot of work there, this is a complex running game for the Packers. It's not surprising, right? And the fact that he didn't give up a lot of pass rush wins, I think that was a win, right? And then really quick, Anthony Belton and Darian Kinnard. I thought they played pretty well for Zach Tom being out. Belton had the penalty in the first quarter. That definitely lowered his grade a bit. There were a few reps where he looked a bit shaky, but he finished with a 61 grade. So you'll take that any day from your backup rookie right tackle. His pass block grade was 66. Not bad. 56 run block grade, so still, a little bit below average in run blocking. But Darian Kinnard looked really good. He was definitely the better of the two. He had a 69 grade in both run and pass blocking. So I do think next week, if Zach Tom can't go, the Packers play Myles Garrett next week. And, you guys know how high I am on Micah Parsons. Myles Garrett's the only defensive player in the same league as Micah Parsons, in my opinion. And so I'm quite nervous about that. I would assume if they don't have Tom, I think they should play Darian Kinnard full-time next week. That is the side that Garrett rushes off of, I believe. So anyway, let's hope they have a plan for Myles Garrett. To put a bow on the first 2 weeks, guys, this is a really, really good team. And I promise you I'm not being a homer here. I'm going to give you maybe some overreactions here. I don't think they're overreactions, but they're coming from a good place is what I'm trying to say. In my opinion, we've not seen a defense like this since that 96 team. The 2010 defense was good, right? They finished, I think they were 3 in the league, I want to say. But they never looked this good at any point from what I can remember. I watched every game that year. There were still so many games where I felt nervous as hell because they couldn't get pressure on the quarterback. They did have a better secondary, right? They had Clay Matthews, Charles Woods, and Nick Collins, Colin Jenkins. They had a few others. Ryan Pickett was a phenomenal run defender. But this defense looks better than any defense that we've seen since the 90s. Sometimes defense is more about how bad your really bad players are versus how great your good players are, right? So again, having a massive hole on defense you can attack over and over again is sometimes worse than just having a lot of good players, not great players. They have phenomenal players, good players, and a few okay players, right? There really aren't a lot of weaknesses, and there's a ton of depth, right? The only position there's not a lot of depth in is corner. Everybody else, if you lose somebody at safety, linebacker, defensive line, whatever, God forbid, you don't want that to happen, right? But there are just so many people that can help. On offense, they can beat you a ton of different ways, right? We saw it in this one. They scored 27 points against 2 really good teams without really even having any semblance of a running game outside of a couple carries, right? If you're not excited about this season yet, I encourage you to check your pulse. No, but in all seriousness, this is really exciting. Going into this weekend, a couple games to look at. I'm excited to see the Lions and Bears. I expect the Lions to come out with their hair on fire after what happened against the Packers. I think they're going to put Caleb in hell on offense or on defense. And I do expect the David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs combo to show out in this one. I thought the Vikings ran pretty well in the Bears last week. I think that we'll see, a pretty good game from those two. Really quick aside on the Bears. I know a lot of people came into this season really high on the Bears. People who I respect, by the way, had the Bears in the playoffs this year. And, their fans are always crazy, saying crazy stuff. I mean, I'll never forget when Adam Rank had them winning 14 games in, was it 2023? Just absurd homerism from Bears fans. Yes, they drafted some good players. I like actually a lot of the decisions they've made. But to extend Ryan Poles when you have like a 15-38 record or something like that, crazy to me. They extended him for 4 years. Again, a lot of their wins and roster building is all on paper. We haven't seen it in person yet. Ultimately, none of these decisions that they've made, despite how much I like them, none of them matter if Caleb Williams isn't great. Personally, despite the hype around Ben Johnson and how smart he is and all the stuff we've heard about him being the boy genius of the NFL, you can't fix who Caleb Williams is, in my opinion. Caleb, phenomenal physical talent, right? Way more physically gifted than 95% of the quarterbacks in the league, but that just doesn't get you anywhere. There have been a lot of really gifted throwers over the years. Jamarcus Russell, phenomenal athlete, arm talent. Now, granted, he did get a little fat in the end, but great arm talent. We can go on and on and on with different people. Zach Wilson had crazy arm talent and ability, right? The mental and understanding what you're seeing on the field is so important. Anticipation, throwing with anticipation. Caleb doesn't do that. I personally don't think he knows how to read a defense. Ever gets pressure, his eyes drop immediately, looks at the pressure, and he makes a check down or throws it away. I think he got way too much credit for quote-unquote improvement in that week 1 game. I just saw so many people fawning over some of his throws. He had crazy throws in every game last season, right? He's very, very, very gifted. So again, I thought he looked like the same quarterback, in my opinion, that we saw last season. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot. I'm sure I'll be wrong about something else. I don't feel like I'm wrong about this one. We're going to see the Bears probably win 7-8 games at best. Caleb's probably going to look mid, despite his stats probably looking decent. He doesn't turn the ball over. That's good, I guess. But, maybe I'm wrong on this one. He's very, very gifted. I'm really stoked to see the Falcons-Vikings too. The Falcons are a fun team. They gave the Bucs all they could handle in week 1. Michael Penix Jr., their quarterback, is one of my fantasy quarterbacks that I got on waivers because I didn't know I was supposed to draft 2 quarterbacks. Oops. I thought he had a nice showing against the Bucs. The Buccaneers-Texans is also a fun game. It's a little early, right? But if you're as convinced as I am that the Packers are really good, all the other really good NFC teams, we want to see them get losses as much as possible. So The Texans defense, I think, is really good. They scored incredibly well last week against the Rams. I thought they made the Rams look pretty bad last week. I think that CJ Stroud and Nico Collins will bounce back in a big way this week. I expect to see the Texans beat the Buccaneers, and we should want that. Lastly, Eagles-Chiefs should be really, really fun. I never thought I'd say this, and I never thought I would ask you guys to do this, but I think we need to root for the Chiefs this week. If the Eagles and Packers are as good as we think they are, again, the Eagles need to start collecting some L's. Again, I promise you I'm not saying this because I'm a diehard, psychotic Packers fan with a podcast, but I do think the Packers are a better team on paper right now, until we do it in person. But from what we've seen so far, I think the Packers are a better team than the Eagles. I think they're one of the only teams in the league who can get pressure on Jalen Hurts with 4 while also being able to slow down Saquon Barkley. So the Packers offense, when they're on their game, I think they can score 17 to 20 points in the Eagles, and the Packers can hold the Eagles to 14 to 17. Again, a lot can happen. A lot will happen between the game, but Packers-Eagles in Week 10 is going to be a lot of fun. So again, I'm looking forward to that. Unfortunately, we got to bite the bullet and cheer for the Chiefs this weekend. Next weekend, we got Browns-Packers on the 21st, I believe. 20th, something like that. And again, Packers are a much better team than the Browns, but that Browns defense is no joke. Obviously, they're going to have to bring their A game. There are no easy games in the NFL. And as we've learned over the years, and if you want to go back to the Super Bowl year, you can go back to 96, you can go back to the 15-1 season. Sometimes the Packers play down to their competition. So I think it'll be a fun game to break down. I'll have that for you the middle of this next week. Follow me on Twitter at Titletown Talk PC. Find the YouTube channel. Subscribe to that for me. Like the video on there. Leave a comment. Download the podcast on any platform you get it so I know that you're listening. Send me your questions, and I'll answer them live on the show. And I will see you guys in the middle of the week. I hope you're having as fun as I am so far. And go Pack, go.